Hey guys, this is Ricky Snyder. I'm going to be looking at the Internet Use Violations case study number 11 for EDL 850 in the spring of 2013 for school law. First thing that I wanted to look at was category 1, and that was the problem identification and analysis of this particular case study. I wanted to look at the things that I knew first of all. First thing that I knew was that Roosevelt High School has some well-off families within their district. They come from families of doctors, lawyers, pretty well-off families, and so they have quite a bit of high economic standards there in their community. Another thing that I knew was that Dr. Forbes had been their principal for 9 years, and he was a well-liked principal there. He worked with the community well. He did a nice job, and the people really respected Dr. Forbes. Miss Walker is a first-year teacher at Roosevelt High School, and she had had some problems with students in the past because she had a very rigorous coursework. She taught some of the advanced science classes, and sometimes there had been some complaints of parents in the past about her rigorous coursework because some of those kids that went to her classes were students that were striving to be salutatorians and valedictorians and things like that, and so that might have been one of their first B's or maybe even C's, and so there were some complaints about her because some of the parents felt like she wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing for their particular students. Like I said, Miss Walker taught specialized science courses such as zoology and botany. We also knew that Dr. Forbes had been receiving complaints about Miss Walker's teaching, like I talked about earlier. So the parents were a little bit unhappy already with Miss Walker. We knew that Miss Walker had called the principal and said that, hey, there's this website out here that says all these bad things. They use vulgar curse words, and they even threaten my life. And this is what the story that Miss Walker told the principal. We also knew that she suspected a student, Randy Franks, as being the guilty party because that was the first name that she said was that she bet that Randy Franks did it because he had not been nice to her in her class and been doing some mean things she felt like towards her, and so she thought he kind of had it out for her. So she had already suspected Randy Franks. Things that I needed to know before I moved forward with this situation. I needed to know, first of all, the district's policy of internet usage, especially if this was something that was done at school. I needed to make sure that we had some forms signed by all students that said that they would abide by our rules when they were on our internet so that we could go forward from there if this was a problem that happened at school. I also needed to figure out who created this website. We needed to find out what exactly the intent was, which takes me to my third thing there, the intent of the comments, and in specific what exactly was said. I needed to reread the website, reread the comments, and make sure that this wasn't Miss Walker just overreacting. I wanted to make sure that these comments were factual, the things that she was saying, and we needed to figure out the intent of the comments, whether it was a harmless prank or whether it was a threat to Miss Walker like she said it was. So then after, figuring out what I knew and what I needed to know, the identification of the problem came next. And the problem is that there were some inappropriate comments made about Miss Walker and that she felt threatened by those comments that were made by these students. Category 2 would be the proposed plan of action that I would take. First of all, I would notify the superintendent of the incident that occurred. This is very important because you want to make sure the superintendent hears it from you and that you know about the situation, that you're handling it, and that way he doesn't hear it from somebody else in the community, and then that looks bad on your part that you weren't keeping the superintendent in the loop. I would also pull students out of Miss Walker's into my office and ask them if they knew anything about the website. Now it's important to say this right here, that I would not accuse anybody of that you did this or you did that. I would just talk to them and figure out if they knew anything about the website, if they possibly knew who might have started it or who posted the comments, and kind of create a working relationship with there, and not coming off as accusing them right in the beginning, or else they will put their defenses up and we won't get anywhere with this situation. I would also work with the IT staff to see if we could find out where the website was created, and maybe if it was from a personal computer, if it was on school time, if it was on school time, maybe who was logged into that particular computer, to help identify who created the website. If it was on, personal time from a home computer or something like that, maybe we could find the IP address and figure out again who created that website. So I would have their help, and just to see, if maybe we could figure any of those things out. I would also talk to Miss Walker after she had the weekend to think over the situation to see if there was any other information that she could pass along that would be of use. I wanted to talk to her, especially after she had cooled off, and maybe think back, maybe what this wasn't necessarily a threat, maybe this was a harmless prank. You want to get to the bottom of it. You don't want to overreact, but at the same time, you want to let your teacher know that, hey, I've got your back, and I believe in you, and I trust you, and that puts a faith and trust in between the teacher and administrator. So I would talk to her after she had the weekend to kind of calm down a little bit and see if her story was still the same. Not necessarily to catch her in a trap or anything, but just to see if she could help pass along some more information. A couple of the strategies that I would use, I've already hit on a little bit, but I would be very careful not to accuse anyone, even Miss Walker, of forging the truth a little bit or embellishing. You want to make sure that everybody stays calm and don't put them on the defensive right away, because then you get nowhere if they bristle up. So make sure that you don't accuse anyone until you have some clear, concrete evidence, like maybe who made the website, or actually, once you read the website yourself and saw some of those comments. I would also communicate with other teachers to be on the lookout for students discussing this topic. A lot of times, kids that do these things, they want to talk and they want to run their mouths and kind of brag and get a little of that notoriety from this. And so other teachers might hear some things, and that would help expedite the process of figuring out the culprit behind this website and some of these comments. Category 3, how to resolve these issues. You always want to do what's best for students, and that's something as an administrator I find very important, that you're always asking yourself what is best for students. Again, I go back to don't wrongfully accuse anyone without gathering all data, because that sets off that relationship on the wrong foot, and that's not what's best for students. You want to have a respectful relationship, and if you go in throwing out accusations with students, they're not going to respect you, and they're never going to be able to trust you, and so that's not what's best for students. So you always want to make sure that you don't wrongfully accuse anyone. Once establishing the guilty party, I would like to have Miss Walker and this particular student sit down for a conversation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe they meant it as harmless, and so Miss Walker can see their side of the story. Maybe Miss Walker can tell them why she felt she was being threatened, and maybe we can come to a better understanding and maybe build a better relationship for that particular student or students and Miss Walker, so that those students can thrive in Miss Walker's classroom, and she can build those relationships that she's struggling with a little bit right now, and maybe see things from the other side. Resolution of the problem. I would talk with Miss Walker again. As a principal, I've already hit on this, but talk to Miss Walker about maintaining a better rapport with her students. She has had problems with this in the past, but just tell her how important it is for these students to trust and believe in her, and she will get so much farther with them in her teaching in the classroom. And then maybe these websites and these comments, won't future or resurface themselves in the future. Keep suggesting additional strategies to help Miss Walker with her teaching. It's becoming more and more of an issue, and if these issues continue to keep popping up, let her know that these issues are going to have to be dealt with sometime. It's very important here again to let her know that you have her back and you support her 100%, but you're just trying to help her become a better teacher. At all times we should all be striving to continue to learn, be a lifelong learner, and this is just one of those times where she can continue to become a better teacher. And if she has that good relationship, that trust with the principal, this is something that could go very smoothly. If she doesn't have that, it could be something that goes very badly. Category 4, I can't read my Roman numerals, I guess. Debriefing the problem. What was I thinking or feeling during this problem? It's very important as an administrator to know that your teachers are supported and that your teachers feel supported. If you don't support Miss Walker, all your other teachers are going to hear about this, and they're going to get a negative connotation about you as an administrator, and that is not something that you want. So you always have to be thinking what's best for students, and also show that you support your teachers as well. It's also important to value each student's learning. You want to make sure that you're not disrupting this learning process by accusing people or giving them the wrong idea. So again, you have that trust and that relationship that you have tried so hard to build with each student. Any unresolved issues, a couple of them may be, not sure if the website will get taken down. If it was on school computers, that's probably something you can definitely take down. If it's on a personal computer, that's a fine line, that you'll have to be very careful with. And so you can maybe request that it be taken down, but that might not be something that can happen. And once it's on the internet, it's out there forever somewhere. So that would be one unresolved issue. And how does Miss Walker handle this situation? What's her response? Does that student that said these things, does she hold a grudge and even, tear that relationship even more, or does she try to help that relationship and try to slowly mend and build that relationship? So that would be an unresolved issue that hopefully, after talking to her and communicating the values that I want her to get out of this situation, that she handles it in the correct manner. Category 5. What I wanted to look at here was reflecting on this. How do I promote the success of all students with integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner? So the first component was looking at integrity and ethical behavior. And the first way that I did that was interview the students. And if I've already worked hard to build this relationship, and it said, I was very well liked by the community, then this interview should go pretty well, and it can gather me information, not accusing anybody again, but just going through and talking to the students and trying to get a feel for this particular situation and what happened. I definitely want to read the website myself, because sometimes things can get misconstrued over the internet or text, or when it's not a face-to-face conversation, sometimes these things can get misconstrued. And so I want to read the website myself and judge these comments for myself and see what was actually being said by the students and what the intent and the meaning was behind it. And the big thing is, don't jump to conclusions. Miss Walker said Randy Franks was the culprit right away, and I've got to put that bias aside, even though I want to support my teacher and look at it from an unbiased point of view to get to the bottom of it. The second component was fairly, equitably, and with dignity and respect. Again, I didn't accuse the students. We got off on the right foot. We were able to probably solve a little bit better than if I went in there accusing students right away. I didn't discount Miss Walker's story, because again, I want to be supportive of her and I want to get to the bottom of it, and I want to do what is right by student and by teacher. And again, I didn't automatically assume that it was Randy Franks, even though Miss Walker thought it was. You got to dig to the bottom, and that's the way that you're always constantly trying to be fair and equitable. The third component of this was being personal and professional code of ethics. You always want to try to do what's right. The first thing that I did was inform the superintendent in my plan of action. Wanted to keep him in the loop so that he doesn't hear about it other places and think that I'm going behind his back and trying to do things on the lowdown, and we just got to keep that open line of communication. Also, having discussions with Miss Walker about how can I improve her, how can we make her a better teacher, how can we help build her relationships, not as a negative thing but as a positive thing, so that she can become a better teacher and a better role model for these students. And the last way, the personal and professional code of ethics that I used, was talk to the IT staff about the responsibility of the website. Who was in charge of making it? Was it in charge, or was it made at school? And just getting to the bottom of that, and keeping that professional, and telling them to make sure that this stays, our conversation stays between us, and again, going about it the right way, not accusing, not sneaking around doing things, making sure that people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and that you're just trying to get to the bottom of it, so that it can be handled in a discreet manner, so that it can be handled in a fair manner, and so that everybody involved feels better about the situation after it is done. Thank you guys very much for listening. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you later.